The average American household earning over $200,000 a year is currently living paycheck to paycheck at a rate of nearly 40%. According to a 2025 report from Bank of America, the struggle isn't limited to the working class anymore. High earners are increasingly finding themselves in a state of functional poverty. They have the house, the cars, and the private school tuitions, but they have zero margin for error. A single job loss or a medical emergency would collapse the entire structure in 90 days. This is the paradox of the modern upper middle class. We have never made more money, yet we have never been more fragile. Most people think wealth is a number on a W-2 form. It isn't. Wealth is the gap between what you earn and what you spend. If that gap is zero, you aren't wealthy. You are just a high-level consumer acting as a pass-through entity for your creditors. Today, I'm going to walk you through the hidden mechanics of high-income poverty. We are going to look at the 9 specific forces that keep six-figure earners on the treadmill until they are 70. By the end of this, you will understand that the math of freedom has nothing to do with your salary and everything to do with your structural overhead. Number 1 is the trap of the primary residence as an investment. Most Americans are told that their home is their greatest asset. This is a mathematical lie. According to data from Case-Shiller, real home prices adjusted for inflation have historically grown at less than 1% annually over the long term. Meanwhile, the costs of ownership are relentless. Property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and HOA fees eat up roughly 3 to 4% of the home value every single year. When a high earner buys a $1.2 million home in a nice suburb of Austin or Seattle, they aren't just buying a place to sleep. They are buying a massive, recurring liability. The property taxes alone in some states can exceed $3,000 a month. That is money that never reaches a brokerage account. It is gone forever. Real wealth is built in assets that pay you to own them. Your home does the exact opposite. It charges you for the privilege of staying there. Number 2 is the phenomenon of lifestyle creep disguised as professional necessity. This is where the trap becomes psychological. You get the promotion to senior VP. You feel like you need to look the part. You trade the 5-year-old Toyota for a $90,000 European SUV. You move from the starter home to the executive neighborhood. You justify it as networking or maintaining an image. The math says otherwise. A $90,000 car with a 5-year loan at 7% interest carries a monthly payment of nearly $1,800. If you took that same $1,800 and invested it in an S&P 500 index fund returning 8%, you would have over $1.1 million after 20 years. Most people trade $1 million retirement for a ventilated leather seat and a badge on a grill. They do this because they value the perception of wealth over the reality of it. Reason 3 is the invisible tax of convenience. High earners are time poor because they work 60 hours a week to sustain their income. They outsource every aspect of their lives. They pay for meal delivery, lawn care, house cleaning, and premium travel. Individually, these services seem reasonable. Collectively, they are a leak in the boat. According to a 2024 survey by Empower, the average American spends over $3,000 a year just on digital subscriptions and small conveniences. For high earners, that number often triples. If you are spending $500 a month on convenience fees and premium services, you are spending $6,000 a year. Over 30 years at 8%, that $6,000 annually grows to $680,000. Convenience is the most expensive product on the market. Number 4 is the private school and extracurricular arms race. This is the hardest one for parents to hear. We want the best for our children. But the cost of private K-12 education in major U.S. cities has outpaced inflation for decades. Many parents are paying $30,000 to $40,000 per year per child by the time the child reaches college. The parents have spent $500,000 on primary education. This often happens at the expense of the parents' own retirement contributions. The irony is that the child graduates into a world where their parents are financially dependent on them in old age. You cannot loan your way through retirement. You can loan your way through college. Sacrificing your 401k for a prestigious elementary school is a mathematical error that ruins 2 generations at once. Reason 5 is the danger of the bonus-dependent lifestyle. Many high earners in finance, tech, and sales rely on a year-end windfall to balance their books. They spend their base salary on fixed costs like the mortgage and car payments. They use the bonus to pay for vacations, home renovations, or to pay down the credit card debt they accumulated during the year. This works until it doesn't. In a down market, bonuses are the first thing to disappear. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, incentive-based pay is highly volatile. When the bonus gets cut by 50%, the high earner is suddenly underwater. They have built a life that requires a perfect economic environment to survive. They have no margin. They are one bad quarter away from a fire sale. Number 6 is the tax drag of the middle-class peak. Once your household income crosses the $300,000 mark, the IRS becomes your most expensive roommate. You lose many of the deductions available to lower earners. You are phased out of Roth IRA contributions. You face the alternative minimum tax. Most people focus on their gross income. They should focus on their net investable income. If you earn $200,000 and spend $180,000, you are in a worse position than someone earning $80,000 and spending $50,000. The second person has more relative surplus. They have more fuel for the compounding engine. The high earner is just working harder to fund a larger tax bill. Reason 7 is the failure to account for phantom carry costs. When you buy a larger house, everything gets more expensive. The utility bills double, the roof replacement costs 3 times as much because the square footage is higher. The furniture costs more because the rooms are bigger. Economists call this the Diderot effect. Obtaining a new possession often creates a spiral of consumption that leads you to acquire even more new things. You don't just buy the house, you buy the lifestyle that fits the house. This is why many people feel poorer after a raise. Their fixed costs expanded faster than their take-home pay. They are running faster just to stay in the same place. Number 8 is the miscalculation of peak earning years. Most professionals assume their income will move in a straight line upward until they retire at 65. The reality is much more jagged. According to data from the Federal Reserve, earnings for many college-educated professionals peak in their late 40s or early 50s. After that, ageism, industry shifts, or health issues can cause income to plateau or drop. If you have built a lifestyle that requires a peak salary to maintain, you are in a precarious position during the final decade of your career. You are forced to keep working because you cannot afford to downsize. Your lifestyle has become a prison. Number 9 is the lack of liquid capital. High earners often have a high net worth on paper. They have equity in their home. They have a vested 401k. They might have some stock options, but they have very little cash. They are what we call house rich and cash poor. When an opportunity arises to buy an investment property or a business at a discount, they can't move. They are tapped out. Real wealth is about optionality. It is about having the liquidity to act when the market panics. If all your money is tied up in your primary residence and your lifestyle, you are not a player in the economy. You are just a passenger. Let's look at how this plays out in the real world. Consider Robert and Jennifer. They live in a suburb of Denver. Robert is an attorney and Jennifer is a project manager. Together they earn $350,000 a year. They live in a $1.4 million home with a $7,000 monthly mortgage. They drive 2 luxury SUVs with combined payments of $2,400. Their children are in private school, costing another $5,000 a month. After taxes, insurance, groceries, and country club dues, Robert and Jennifer are saving less than $2,000 a month. On paper, they are the American dream. In reality, they are exhausted. They argue about the credit card bill every month. They can't imagine retiring because their fixed costs are nearly $20,000 a month. Now look at Michael and Sarah. They live 3 miles away in a much older neighborhood. Michael is a high school principal and Sarah is a nurse practitioner. They earn $220,000 combined. They live in a house they bought 10 years ago for $400,000. Their mortgage is $2,200. They drive a 6-year-old Honda and a paid-off Ford. Their children attend the local public schools. Michael and Sarah save $7,000 every single month. They have a brokerage account worth $1.8 million. Because their living expenses are so low, they could stop working tomorrow and live off the dividends and interest forever. Michael and Sarah are wealthy. Robert and Jennifer are just high-earning tenants of their own lives. The difference isn't the income. The difference is the structure. Michael and Sarah understood early on that every dollar committed to a fixed expense is a dollar that cannot buy their freedom. They chose to be rich rather than to look rich. They understood that a smaller house leads to a bigger life. We live in a culture that treats debt like a tool and consumption like a virtue. The financial industry wants you to stay on the treadmill. They want you to keep upgrading, keep borrowing, and keep working. They want you to believe that the next raise will finally be the one that makes you feel secure. But security doesn't come from a raise. It comes from a surplus. It comes from the quiet realization that you don't need to impress people you don't like with money you haven't earned yet. It comes from the math. If you can learn to live on 50% of what you make, you are invincible. If you spend 90% of what you make, You are a slave to the machine. The goal isn't to die with the most toys or the biggest zip code. The goal is to own your time. Wealth is not the ability to buy things. Wealth is the ability to say no. It is the power to walk away from a job you hate, a city you're tired of, or a life that no longer fits. You build that power, one saved dollar at a time. Stop funding the bank's dreams and start funding your own. The math doesn't care about your status. It only cares about your margin. The most expensive thing you will ever buy is the approval of people who aren't paying your bills. Freedom is found in the gap between your income and your ego. Real wealth is the silence of a paid-off life.